From here, like I talked about my guys, like, you got to be kind of doing the robot move, and I'll show you what I mean. Because if we're in a clinch situation, right, and my backs of my knees, backs of my ankles are out away, there's always a little give if it's a cage, so you can't avoid this entirely. But the more that I have this here, if he level changes, I'm done, right? Any decent level of grappling. So from here, I'm always going to be pressing the backs of my heels, the backs of my knees against the cage. So if we're in a clinch and then all of a sudden John were to go down and start to come around my knees, right? From here, it's not just turning your body. See, energy leakage. I'm out away from the wall from here. You see this position all the time in the MMA. So I'm turning my hips, trying to hide them a little bit. But when I do this, I want my ass, backs of my knees, and heels all pressed in from here. And then I turn, and then all of a sudden, if he goes to pull out, my first line of defense is just my posture, okay? So that's quite strong in that position, right? So if we look at that, I'm just gonna do it by myself. If we look at that on the floor, make sure that you can kind of see down here a little bit. So my initial posture, we were talking about, right? So I spread everything out, and then I start to make that turn. And at some point, once you get to that full turn, yes, you can bring your opposite leg up. But from here, once I've done that, I want this patella, see the daylight here? That daylight represents somebody's foot still tucked under your kneecap. So from here, I'm gonna make a shift as much as my hip flexibility requires. And it's okay for this shoulder to come up. You just don't want to necessarily turn all the way on your side, right? Because you're gonna give some other things up for that. But I want that to turn until my patella is actually literally making contact with the mat. And you'll find that that's coordinated with your toes pointing down. So right now, nobody's foot can tuck underneath that, right? So I take the seal away, I take their hooks away as best as possible, I make my upper body as strong as possible and start to fan out, I make that shift, okay? And then from here, a little adjustment until the kneecap's pointing into the mat. And then at this point, it's really just adding the scapular extension, right? So my scapular expands, my shoulder expands at the joint, and now it's just like a little slider lash, right? As my knee advances, my elbow goes down. Then you're in half guard, okay? And if you needed to, you can add the leg drag, okay? Dragging in by hooking your Achilles over their ankle, or hooking underneath and then lifting their foot into half guard. Make sense? So let's go ahead and just try that a couple more times and make sure you get the seal of your kneecap to the mat.